begin today's program, I'd like to acknowledge that we are gathered today on the traditional territories of the
Mississaugas of the New Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. I invite us all as creators of culture to help strengthen our relationship with Indigenous people and uphold the values of collaboration and inclusion in all that we do. And in the spirit of this, today I'm going to be highlighting Indigenous filmmakers within our community that I think we should all just be super aware of. Adam Garnett Jones is a queer filmmaker, executive director of content at Aboriginal Peoples Television Network, as well as a novelist and a beadworker of Cree Métis Danish descent. His debut film, Fire Song, was one of the first films by an Indigenous director to feature two spirited characters, and it premiered at TIFF in 2015 and won Imaginative Awards that same year. Adam's sophomore film was Great, 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 which was co-created with Sarah Kalowski. Is Sarah here? Sarah's been here all week. It was great. It was one of my favorite features that we played back in 2017, and it won Best Feature, Best Screenplay, and Best Performance that year. So you can stream it on Apple TV and Tubi and more, and check out Adam's films. Follow him on Instagram to see his stunning beadwork. And welcome to Day 5 of the Canadian Film Fest, presented by Super Channel. I'm Jen. I'm the Director of Industry here at Canadian Film Fest. Very excited for this conversation ahead on navigating a labyrinth of film markets, acquisition and distribution, where no one path is promised and every negotiation is a plot twist waiting to unfold. Am I right? So thank you for explaining that to us. We're very grateful to this panel of pros for coming out today to help us get a better idea of the business of film, which will ultimately help our stories get to their audiences. And thank you so much, Holly, for leading the conversation today. I'll give the mic to you.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks everyone for being here. I'm really excited to be having this discussion with these wonderful experts. As a filmmaker, distribution was very much a mystery to me. I think it's definitely not discussed enough in film schools as it could be. And until I started working in the field, there were a lot of unknowns. So hopefully we can demystify some of that today. And perhaps the best way to start is to start with acquisitions. So kind of like the first step in the distribution process. So what is the first thing that stands out about a good acquisition in terms of its market readiness? How do you know that it has something that the market wants or the ingredients to kind of get it there?
Well, I have the mic, so I'll start things off. Although you can probably see my bio behind me, but what I want to mention is that the company that I'm working for, Ouat Media, we specialize in short film sales. So short films is the only genre that we work with, and it's sales. So we don't work in festival distribution. We're kind of very commercially oriented. And our catalog is international, and we work internationally as well. So it means that we sell content to broadcasters and platforms worldwide, local and global. So what we look for, and the way our screening team is trained, is that we don't ask a question whether a film is good. We ask what kind of good work can we do on it. To put it frankly, if it's sellable, if that kind of film will resonate with most of the licensors that we work with. Whether audiences worldwide will be able to enjoy it. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Tim. So basically the same kind of sentiment in the fact that you're looking for something that you can sell. Obviously cast or someone recognizable is obviously helpful, but if it's a Canadian film, a story that actually resonates with a Canadian audience. It doesn't necessarily have to be a international selling, but it has to be sellable, I guess, to a Canadian audience in some nature. It doesn't have to be everywhere that you can play it, or it can be just a niche audience. It depends on what the film would be.
Hi, I'm Kirk, and good morning to you. Oh, no, good afternoon. Oh my gosh, it's now the afternoon. Good afternoon to all of you for coming out. They said it was going to be bad weather, so I'm glad you're here. Stay here for the rest of the day. Don't leave. So if you see my bio behind me, which is kind of the longest, I didn't realize it was going to be that big. I do a few things, and I just wanted to get that off the ground and let you know what I do. I work as a consultant and a strategist for film festivals around the world. I am working for Raven Banner in this capacity. We were going to have someone from Raven Banner here. They were unable to make it, so shame on you, Andrew Hunt. Even though he's my boss, he's not here. So I'm going to do as much as I can to fill in that gap. But I just want to say that I don't necessarily speak on a professional manner about acquisition because I'm not always at the table or in the room when it happens at Raven Banner, but I am part of the process, but I'm at the end. Way at the end. So I'll do my best to speak on it. So what I can say about acquisition and when do you know if you have a good deal or when you have a good, have you acquired something that's good? I'd look at a couple of factors. One, what has it been like for it in the festival circuit? Has there been a huge buzz by festivals? Does everybody want it? The second is purely, based on the value of that project. Did you, and especially if it's an international project, but we're here in Canada, we're at CFF. So if it's a project that is basically on everyone's radar and everyone wants it, there's going to be a bit of a bid-in for it. And did you do good in terms of bidding out someone else for that project? Then you know you've done really well. And that's a standard for a distributor. And the other one is, I think I had another example and I totally forgot. But those two, I think, are valuable in itself. Is number one, is there a good buzz on the project? And number two, how many people are bidding for this project? And how did you do in trying to acquire it?
Okay, Kirk, I'll just ask a follow-up. Just in broad strokes, how often is Raven Banner buying films at festivals versus like at script stage?
Okay, so another thing I have to just be clear about with Raven Banner is that we're more of a sales agent company, and we do distribution in Canada, but it's a very small percentage of our workload. And so we have Raven Banner releasing, and that is for genre projects. And we also have Northern Banner, which is for Canadian content, and it does not necessarily have to be genre. We will also assist in getting that film that you've made out to the public on every different platform and theatrical. We still do theatrical, and we don't necessarily pick up a lot of projects in the script stage. We usually pick up stuff at the end. There are times when we will offer a letter of intent, LOI, but it's very few. It has to be a really strong project, and then it has to also be attached to Telefilm Canada. That's very, very important, people. You have to have a project attached to Telefilm Canada. It's hard to get a project to a distributor when you don't have that. There is a system in place already for you. So learn what that system is. Talk to a Telefilm Canada representative and learn what it is. Because if you don't have their support, it's a much, much more a struggle. And I've seen good films that do not get the sort of support that they can from distributors because they don't have that. And there's a pipeline with Telefilm and distributors to work together.
Okay. Awesome, thank you. All three of you are coming at this from such different angles. I think it's really interesting, but apologies to the audience if it feels disorganized at times. Just want to make sure that I'm following up on all of these really interesting ideas. So maybe we'll get back to festival strategy in a second, but I just wanted to ask more generally that something that I've noticed in my work in distribution, just generally there seems to be kind of a hunger and a push towards films that are distinctly Canadian as opposed to maybe secretly Canadian, kind of emulating, maybe a more American style, or the idea being that communities really want to see themselves specifically represented on screen. So I know, Inga, you work more in like worldwide sales, but is there still a value in short films that are distinctly Canadian in the international marketplace?
Of course, but what is Canadian content? That's a panel of its own, I think. But we had great successes with Canadian films. And as a company, we sign only up to 12 titles a year, and we look at what's popping up at A-list film festivals worldwide. So the fact that we consistently work with Canadian talent just goes to show how great of a potential Canadian filmmakers have. And specific example I can mention is maybe Peter Huang's 5 Films About Technology. It's a short film that we signed right ahead of its TIFF premiere, and you can still screen it on the New Yorker platform. But beyond that, we worked with Neon in the US. Neon programmed it ahead of one of their features. The short film sold in Spain, France, Sweden, Japan, so really traveled quite well, and this is just one of many examples we have. But yes, we tend to not think too much if Canadian film that we're screening is Canadian enough. Even thinking about Sao Matang, a short film we have this cycle that is included in TIFF's top 10 short films of the year. I don't think it qualifies as Canadian if you use CanCon standard. So really for us, we look at the big picture. We'll look how that film is performing at festivals and whether there's a market for it. And yes, other than that, it's always a pleasure to support the local talent. And maybe last thing, I don't know if it applies to short film only or it's universal, but for us, a big difference when we come to Canada is whether it's Quebecois project or not. So Quebec is kind of its own little universe where filmmakers can rely on really substantial support, at least on the short film level. So that's something that we're taking into consideration as well.
Awesome. Yeah. And just to clarify, I was talking about more Canadian stories versus like legally CanCon with Capco. Okay, so it's seeming that talking about festivals is really important here, kind of inescapable. So I'll just dive right in. You mentioned picking something up before its TIFF premiere. How crucial is festival play to licensors' interest in a film?
It's very important. Especially the premiere, at least for us. One thing that I wish someone told me, when I was in film school, is that different rules apply to short films compared to features. That we used to be taught that if you have a film, you have to do festivals first, and then when that is done, then you start thinking about what else can you do. Maybe your film could play on TV or a platform, when in fact, at least for short film, if market is something you're curious about, if you want to see your film kind of outside of the festival circuit, you should start thinking about reaching out to sales agents and distributors as soon as you know which festival you're premiering at, to give them an opportunity to think about the film, to look at their catalog, to see how the market is doing at the moment, what's trending, what's not, and maybe even sign you and your project ahead of the premiere and kind of start off with already working on the ground at the festival on sales and securing deals.
So the festival premiere is like the biggest calling card if you're reaching out to a distributor?
At least for us, because with short film, it's a very oversaturated market. So every festival has at least 30 to 60 short films that they program. So we have to come up with some sort of a criteria. For us, the criteria is let's talk when you're premiering, because then we will be able to kind of have a better understanding of what we can do. Because your previous question was so great. It's like what stage should we get involved? And that really is one of the reasons, is that sometimes we get a script, we think it's fantastic, we know the director is talented, we've worked with the producer before, but that's not enough, because in 2 years, 3 years from that moment, trends in the market may have changed completely, or what they had on the script level may have not translated well to the screen, and just getting attached to a project that early on, at least in short film world, and especially when you're, as we are, a business that is self-sufficient. We don't have access to any support, no grants, no government funding. We kind of have to make those tough calls often.
Yeah, okay. Speaking of tough calls, something that comes up all the time is agonizing over premiere status and kind of sometimes foregoing, playing at a certain festival because you're really attached to this idea of premiering somewhere specific. Kirk, how often does premiere status play into festival strategy? Are you ever advising people to hold off? Do you feel like just the merrier, the more festival play, the better? Like how do you walk into those conversations about premiere status?
With the ability to know that I know the filmmaker is going to talk me down no matter what I say to them. They never listen when it comes to festival status, premiere status, sorry, at festivals. They tend to think that every film that they've ever created belongs at the A-list festivals. So when a person, and you can look among yourself and even raise your hand, how many people have done a film and just submit it right away to TIFF? Let's see your hands. Yeah, and some of you guys are not gonna say, it's okay. We're at CFF, so it's okay. But I often tell filmmakers that it's really about, there is a film for a festival out there, and not every festival is for that film. And you really have to think about, I know, it's like, I don't know, Kung Fu Panda kind of sensei thing, I don't know. But what I'm really trying to say is that you make your film, but you don't really know where to put that film. So you assume it's the greatest film you've ever made, and that's fine, and you should. It's your work, you should be proud of it. But if you do the research, you can see that some festivals do not or are not a good fit for you. You would not obviously send a horror film to a documentary film festival, right? So it's pretty much the same thing. If you have a film that is more community-based, then you have to think to yourself, well, a big A-list festival like TIFF or Sundance or whatever won't be the right festival for me because I'm trying to speak to a particular audience. But there are other criteria. I just use it as an example, but there are other criteria in terms of the festival status, premiere status and festivals that you want to go to. And these are things you should think about because a lot of people have to think about this, and this will help to narrow down your submissions, perhaps. Think about what you want to get out of it. So some things you might want to think about. Do I have a distributor? No. Do I want a distributor? Yes. Do I have sales attached to this, like a sales agent attached to it? Probably not. Do I need that? As Inga was saying earlier, you do want to at least get a sales agent as soon as you get into a festival. So if you're looking for a sales agent, you're going to have to look at festivals that can offer that to you. And yes, it would be the larger festivals. But I know, I already said don't run to them. But there are other criteria. What about the industry? What about press? What are you looking for? Are you looking for more press around it? Do you want the industry to know who you are, that you've arrived? Those things you have to think about as well. And awards. Do you want to walk away with certain awards? That is also a thing you should think about. And last but not least, how you connecting with the audience. Like I said, is it a community-based film? Do you need to connect with that particular community so you go to that particular film festival? Like, for example, if it's a film that has to do with female subject matter, then you might want to go to Female Eye or other female film festivals out there. So that is one of the ways that I try to explain it to filmmakers for them to fully understand and value their film because it's important to get the film out.
Awesome. Yeah, please tell us, Tim.
Well, I haven't told anybody what I do, so I'll start with that. So it says up there, or used to say up there, been around this business for a long time. So currently what I'm doing is I work for a London-based company that does box office forecasting for the world, basically. The second company I'm working for is Landmark Cinemas, which I'm doing booking currently for, and eventually will do analytical work for them. And the third is a Canadian distribution company called Game Theory. And Game Theory is going to be, I guess, part of this discussion. So what Kirk was just saying, I always tell people that are either making a film or finished a film or whatever the case, you have to kind of think of, in the end, where do I see the film that I've made or making play? Not necessarily festival. Is it going to be on Crave? Is it going to be on Netflix? Is it only going to be on YouTube? Like, where do you see your film playing? Start with that. If your grandiose idea is it's going to be in 3,000 theaters across North America, competing with Godzilla on its opening weekend, you probably should shake your head. If you think that it deserves to play a festival circuit across Canada or something to that effect because you want a pat on the back and you want accolades and you want to get millions of dollars for your next film or more millions of dollars for the film after that, then that's the circuit you should play. From a festival side of things, it's interesting because there's a film, I won't name it, but there was a film that had the opportunity of getting into Venice, and it had the opportunity of getting into TIFF. It was Canadian. And the distributor wanted to play it in Venice because they figured if it went into TIFF, even though it was Canadian, it was going to get buried in all of that. It was good. It was going to hit top 10s, but in that competition with all those other top 10s, it was going to be the third page in the Globe and Mail. Going into Venice, it got a lot of accolades. It came back as being a big Canadian film coming out of Venice, and it had more prestige when it actually played in, I think it was Discovery in the TIFF. So it got discovered in TIFF, but it got the accolades out of Venice. So back to the premiere status, that's kind of that same kind of look. Like, if you're thinking I'm the distributor of the film, how do I want to play this out to eventually get to that place that I want to see my film? So if it's, I'm going to play premiere slot in TIFF, then I know my next window is immediately going to be playing in theaters across Canada or playing all the festivals across Canada. If you're just getting discovered, you're knowing that it's going to be small, it's going to play iTunes or Apple or whoever and get on to Crave eventually kind of thing. That's a small little rollout and it's simple. So you got to think of, where do I want my film to play? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable advice. I mean, as someone who's had a short film play in a bunch of smaller Canadian festivals, you really have to consider like the platform that you're getting and yeah, whether you're going to get buried in those bigger festival programs and you know, you want opportunities to talk about your film with audiences. You want to kind of shape the audience over time. And I think playing in different communities, different settings like that is really valuable versus like maybe just a TIFF premiere and then you go straight into theatrical. One thing that we did at Level was we kind of ran some numbers just to see if festival play like had a significant impact on first window sales, on theatrical, and there are some festivals like TIFF and BFI that do have like a huge impact on first window sales. Like the licensors love that, but there is very little impact usually on the theatrical release of a film. So maybe Tim, do you see festivals as kind of shaping an audience, meaning when something lands on your desk and you know that it's played certain festivals, does it give you a sense of maybe who the audience for the film is theatrically? Do you see a relationship there? How do you leverage festival play?
I change my hats again, from a exhibition side of things, if you've played every festival across the country and you've got a big city film, and you've got a small audience for that big city film, if you've played Atlantic or Halifax, how many more people would come to see your film in a theater? Or have you basically taken that whole audience just by giving it away for free, potentially, to a film festival? So that's from an exhibition side of things. We look at it as being like, how many more seats does this actually need in Edmonton or Halifax? If you've already sold out 1,000 seats for 2 shows, how many more people are actually going to want to see your film? We're not going with Blackberry or, Brothers or something to that effect. Obviously, those are bigger, have bigger budgets behind them marketing wise. But if you're a small little film, how many more people will actually go to see your film? So you could use that as a launching pad for that next window, if that makes sense. So from a distribution side of things, you're kind of looking at it as being that same angle as like, if I'm going to just basically stick it in all these festivals, what's my next window that I'm going to play in, or what's my next opportunity out of that? So I always tell people that if you're going to get into a festival, that you should be planning for that next slot, whether it be you're going up on VOD or if you're going into theaters or whatever the case may be. So that's basically how I would look at.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I'm going to continue talking about festivals, if that's all right. Kirk, do you have anything to share about like the genre festival scene? Maybe, obviously there's the big festivals that everyone wants to get into and play, but there's all these smaller festivals that create really amazing opportunities for press and for connecting with audiences. Let's get like a little bit granular, and maybe kind of, is there like an alt festival audience? How do you kind of bifurcate, like if you're going to set a film on a different path? What are some specific choices that can be made, and how does that usually play out in the genre festival scene?
So the genre festival scene in Canada is not as big as the rest of the world. We are familiar with Fantasia, which is the biggest one. Of course, we have our local film festivals here, genre, Toronto After Dark, Blood in the Snow. But when you look across Canada, there's very little space for genre film festivals. Sorry, what were you? What was the question again?
I know it was a bit of a mess of a question, but essentially, if you start making those more specific choices, meaning you pick a festival because it really feels right for the film, how can that kind of affect its overall lifespan, and how can that shape the audience over time? And maybe if you have like a recent example of a film that kind of took one of those different bifurcated paths.
Let me think about that. If I had a film in that sense, it's so hard. There's so many films that I've actually handled, but nothing stood out in that way in Canada, but it stood out internationally. But I'm not sure if you want me to talk about that as well.
I think that's valuable, yeah. International festivals.
It's a film.
You kind of have to think internationally when you're making it.
Yes, and thank you. That's a very important point. You have to think internationally when you're making films. We shouldn't be making films just for Canadians, because if they don't come out and see it, then what's the point, right? And we have as many festivals as we could possibly have in this country. There's so many festivals out there. So I agree with you too in terms of when you say, you don't want to saturate the film by sticking it in as many festivals as possible, because you're losing dollars at the box office. And then, of course, as you said afterwards, Tim, it's really about the next transition from theatrical into what next. So we're constantly looking at the audience that's out there and seeing how can we make this film reach as many people as possible. And that's just typical of our jobs. It's almost like we're the expert in this, but we're not. I don't know if that makes any sense. What I mean is, like, we should know all the variables and it should work all the time, but it doesn't. So even with festivals, it doesn't always work when you put something into a festival, but I do have a good story though, even though I'm saying that. The Sadness, has anyone seen that film? That's one of our films. If you haven't, we're renting it, go online. You can also buy it on our website, ravenbanner.ca. And The Sadness came out during the pandemic, and it was very important for us to sort of leverage it in a way that it's gonna make a big impact, because it was a really good film by a Canadian director who's actually living in Taiwan. And he shot it there. And it's so weird that he was living there and shot it, but he shot it before the pandemic, and then we got it in 2021 because we were shooting it during 2020, parts of it, finishing up in the pandemic. And we got the film in 2021, and we started to think, I started to think, where will this film be placed? And I thought, you know what, we need to get as much eyes on this film in this crazy, crazy world where most festivals are not doing in person, they're doing online. And I chose Locarno. And I sent it to Locarno, and I cannot believe they took it, because it's a vicious film. I mean, you gotta watch it, seriously. It scared the hell out of me. And from that, we got a lot of attention from everyone else. And one of the things that we did at that time is, like, you had to go into cinema to watch it. We weren't allowing it to be online, even though a lot of festivals were doing that. But we were able to push that envelope and said, no, people have to go into the cinema and watch this, even though there were COVID protocols. I'm not trying to kill anyone, but they took care of those things. And the film went around to at least 20 or 30 festivals by the end of the year. And usually, just so you know, films only have a lifetime of festival for 1 year. I don't know if that made sense when I said, but it would only run for about 1 year. So think about that as well when you have a film. And the same for short films, I'm sure. It's just really 1 year. And so we did as much and push it out there for 1 year. And it did really well in Canada, but we never had it released in Canada, which is the sad thing because of the pandemic.
Okay, awesome. Tim, do you have any success stories when it comes to a film that was shaped by its festival run?
I think lots. I'm going to go way back in time. Riding on a bus to Sudbury with Bruce McDonald for Hardcore Logo. That was one of those ones that kind of it really did get discovered coming out of festivals and things like that. Bruce, really early days, I guess it would have been his maybe second or third film, but yeah, it was one of those things that people saw and discovered and wanted to see it. So it was really ground, but that was years ago. And that same method of doing something probably wouldn't work because of the amount of competition out there. A film like you just said, Sadness, or a specific genre kind of film would probably have better success coming out of festivals, because there are so many festivals that you can discover something like that. If you're just making a dramatic film or something mainstream, I guess you could say, you could get just lost inside the festival circuit. But yeah, there's so many little films that have appeared in festivals and people have seen, and they might have only played in Edmonton, or they might have only played in Atlantic or something like that, but someone saw it, someone told somebody about it, and the next thing you know, there was a bit of a buzz on a film.
Awesome, thank you. Jen, how much time do we have? Okay, cool. So I'll just ask one more broad question, kind of taking it back to the beginning of the conversation. So, you're a filmmaker or you're a distributor and you're looking at a film for the first time, you might have a sense of who the audience for the film is. But what are some kind of concrete things that you can do to really narrow in on truly like who the demographic for the film is? There's a lot of conversation about sort of like psychographics of who might like the film or who might be drawn to the film, but ultimately you are kind of beholden to these demographic questions. When you're marketing a film, you need to be able to reach like a certain demographic. So what are some things that you do, maybe it's your process or advice that you have for a filmmaker to really start thinking about the audience at the outset, like as early as possible?
Probably that's, and when I said before, like, where do you want to see your film? Like, it's the same thing. Like, when you're thinking about making the film, you have to think about who your audience actually is for the film. So it's, sure, a distributor or whoever is going to say this is the audience for your film, but you should be making the film for an audience, if that makes any sense. So it's, if you're making a horror film, you know kind of who the audience is. You're getting an 18 to 34, slightly more female audience, I guess, depending on how graphic it is. If you're making a romantic comedy, obviously it's a female-driven audience. If you're making a romantic comedy with an older lead, then it's an older female audience. So you have to really know. So when you're coming to someone to pitch the film, whether it be a festival or a distributor or whoever, that's part of your package to them. That I really see this having a life on YouTube, and because a female 35 to 44 audience is just driven to that platform in order to watch what I'm making. And it could be a short, it could be 90 minutes, it could be 4 hours. You kind of have to know at the same time. So then when you bring the film or the script or whatever to a distributor, they look at it and kind of go, you're right, you've nailed it. You've written something, or you've made something that audience is going to respond to. If you bring it to a distributor and they look at it and they kind of go, you think that's for females? Then you've made a mistake somewhere along the line. Or and you see it these days, even in something like a Madam Web, for that matter. They made a film for a specific audience, but during the making of the film, they completely lost who that audience was, and basically killed the film. So it's that. So basically, think of those things, like where is it going to be and who is going to want to see it.
I'd like to maybe put this tool on your radar. Maybe some of you have heard of it already. It's called Audience Design. So this tool has been developed by Torino Film Lab a few years back, and it's available online. If you Google Audience Design Torino Film Lab, you'll just be able to download this big PDF document. And if you're a filmmaker, a producer, a director, you can empower yourself and learn a little bit more how you can start thinking about the audience as early as when you're developing the script or when you're in editing room. So not at the stage where you're doing audience testing, or not at the stage where you're already talking with a sales agent or distributor. So even before that, where some of the things that can help you align your expectation and your kind of idea of who the film is for with the reality of maybe the market or the specific audiences that you want to play your film with. And also on our end, in terms of audiences, I have to say that when we add a film to our catalog, the reality is that often the producers or the directors who pitch the film to us don't always see the film the way we do. We had a specific example where one film was pitched to us as a comedy, and we had to sit down and say, maybe in a specific territory it might be, but otherwise we would rather not pitch this as a comedy. And also because when we sign a film, we already have kind of at the back of our mind what are the mandates of the licensors we work with. So maybe for this specific licensor, we emphasize the fact that this film has a certain subject matter. With that licensor, we'll emphasize the fact that it premiered at a festival, because we know that this buyer tends to program content around festival events. So we always adjust the pitching when we approach individual licensors. And as a filmmaker, I'm not too sure how can you possibly know that. That's our that's our job. We've been doing it for 17 years. That's why we exist. And if what I guess the point I'm trying to make is that if you're able to somehow access this kind of knowledge. So yes, attending panels like that is one way, but also just maybe learn a little bit more about what distributors are out there, festival distributors, including, or what sales agents are out there, what catalogs do they have, what kind of films do they take, maybe you're even able to learn a little bit more what journeys those films enjoy, and it'll help you hopefully also inform the work that you're doing on your own project and feel a little bit more ready to have your film play for the audiences and talk about the audiences eventually.
Thank you for saying that, because I was going to disagree with everybody up here. And that's just the producer creative part of me. I really want you guys to just focus on doing the work. You know, don't worry about the audience at any stage. The audience will be shaped by the work you've done. When you write a good script and you're happy with it, we're the experts, like you said. We will know who the audience is. We want you to at least tell us, because we want to not offend you. Like you said, it's someone comes to you and say it's a comedy, and you're like, yeah, and what? No, not in Taiwan. It's going to be offensive to people there. Or some religious symbols that you may put in your script and things like that. So we're the expert, and we can tell you, because we know, at least from Raven Banner's point of view, we know what sells. So we like to at least come to us in the script stage. We're not going to finance anything. We're not going to do anything much to help you at that point, but we want to know what you have and what is available. And so we just want you to write the best thing you could possibly write and put together a amazing financial plan in how you're going to get this film made. The audience is out there. We'll find the audience for you. That's what I wanted to say.
Rebuttal, I guess. It's not necessarily, I agree with you, but my comment was basically that you have to think about what you're writing. Like your creative side of it is you're writing what you want to write, and you want to tell a story that you want to tell, but you still have to have a idea of who actually wants to see it. Like if you're writing a horror film or something to that effect, it's a little different from if you're writing a dramatic piece of, so you have to, when you're writing it, you have to have the characters develop to the audience that is actually going to want to accept it. You can't have like this broad stroking, I'm going to catch 4-quadrant audience, especially with the budgets potentially we're talking about in this room. If you're talking about a 20, 40, $100 million picture, totally different. But if you're talking a small budget picture that's going to have a limited audience, you really have to know who the audience is that's going to want to see the film. But you're right. In the end, when you deliver the product, it is going to be the distributor that's going to say, you're wrong, it's not a comedy. Or, and guide the, right, yeah.
Yeah, I'll say one last thing. Oh, no, go ahead.
Yes, and I understand your point. Of course, you cannot reverse engineer, if you know what I mean. So sometimes I get asked, what sells? And I can say, well, generically, it's short films under 15 minutes, comedies, no nudity and violence, not dialogue-driven. And people come back and say, here it is. So now it's going to be the most sellable film in your catalog. And we have to say, well, there's all the other factors too. So of course it all starts off with the fact that you really believe in your project, you really want to make the film, but and that's the film that you're going to make. But along the way, if you can also consider what's next and think ahead and kind of thinking about the audience, I think is part of that process. It will only help you, can't possibly hurt you.
That's a great point. There's no perfect formula, but I think the key to making something interesting is making something specific. You don't want to appeal to everyone because you'll appeal to no one. So yeah, I think those are all really good points. I'm pleased to have sparked a tiny bit of debate. And I think I'll hand it over to questions if anyone has one. Yeah.
What are the pros and cons for going festival first versus sales agent distributor first?
So the question was about going festival first versus sales agent or distributor first with your film.
Well, they kind of would go hand in hand, I would say. So when you think about festivals, I wonder if there's always an opportunity for you to, if it's a short film, to partner up with a festival distributor. So someone who can develop a strategy for you of what festivals might be the best fit for your film. And then they may or may not know sales agents that they can also try attach to the film. So that's one way. Another way, you can, if you're just taking care of the festival journey yourself, then you can apply. But for us, at least, the big piece of the puzzle is that we'd like to get involved as early in the journey as possible, so festival journey, because the reality is, and I think Kirk mentioned that unfortunately, within a year, market loses interest in films. That maybe does not apply to our Oscar films. We had 12 Oscar nominees, 3 winners. So Oscars is a completely different journey. But in general, you kind of want to capture the moment and the buzz of the festival premiere and the festival journey. And I'll maybe use specific examples. So as a sales agent, if I know that a short film in our catalog is going to be screening next in a festival in Spain, that gives me an opportunity to maybe knock at the door of a couple of broadcasters in Spain that we work with to say, I know you received our pitch, I know you needed a moment to think about the film, just letting you know, next month this film is playing in your territory, or maybe even after the festival screening, I can share with them how receptive the audience was of the film, or maybe the film won an award. So at least in our little universe, like festival strategy and sales strategy goes hand in hand.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. And for me, it's a little different because it's a film that is already being acquired by the distributor, by the sales company, Raven Banner. But if I were to consult with someone like yourself, I would say that it's very, very important to get a sales agent right away. Start doing your research, looking for a sales agent out there. It doesn't mean that they're going to take it because you're trying to push it to them before you get to a festival, but it's good to at least know who they are. And when you get into that festival, trust me, sales agents, if you didn't already find one, they'll find you. They will look through a list of films that have no attachment to a distributor or sales company, and they'll come to you and say, look, I want to represent your film. And that's when you really have to understand what it is that you're getting into. So that's the other part, research. I think that for us, as Inga said, when you have, when you come to Raven Banner, because we take Canadian films, of course, and we sell them, and if we are putting a film in a festival, say, I don't know, and I'll go back to Spain. They're very much the same thing that Inga does, we do as well. We want as much buzz around this film because anything that generate a buzz is going to help us to sell to our clients. And we have a number of clients from each territories that we knock on the door and say, look, this film is doing really well. It's in this particular festival in Spain. Here's a link, check it out. And we hope to hear back from you. And if we don't, we follow up. So festivals are important in that way to get a sales done. And it's going to bring us press. It's going to bring us maybe an award. It's going to give us the opportunity to encourage sales in every territory. So I work hand in hand with the salespeople. So I'm always telling them where the film is and what can we do to get more sales on that film.
Can I quickly add one more thing on? They brought up something so important, at least for our acquisitions team. So those are my colleagues who actively search out films to add to our catalog. You'll help yourself so much if once you have finished the film and it's at a festival, you Google your film and see how hard or how easy it is to find the contact information for you as the rights owner of the film. I cannot tell you how many times we've frankly just gave up on trying to sign the film just because it's been a bit of a trip to find the person in charge of a conversation about the film, right? So, or if you have a big festival premiere, that will keep you really busy. Do you have anyone on your team who will check the email to make sure that if you have emails from distributors, sales agents, press, that the responses will be sent out? Because festivals are also, some of them are more friendlier to the industry, than others. And what I mean by that some festivals allow industry to log in and access content remotely, or maybe there's a way that we can get screeners for the films, while others rely on us kind of doing the work and reaching out to filmmakers. So really you help yourself immensely if you'll be easy to discover.
Good tip. It's what a nightmare scenario that a distributor's trying to get in touch with you and they can't. Any other questions?
We really want you, we find you, but all things considered, right? If it's 60, let's use Cannes as an example, right? If it's 15 films, we screen them all, and we have 3 that we feel equally passionate about. And out of 3, 2 we're able to get a hold with right away. We schedule the meeting the next day. Who do you think will eventually kind of carry on conversation with and end up working with? So, because it's as much to us about the film as it is about the team behind the film, because it's such a long relationship. We work on the film for at least 2 years, so we want to make sure that we kind of can get a hold of you and have a conversation with you, and the other way around.
I just want to quickly add to that. I was the programming director at DRIF, Durham Regional International Film Festival, and what you say about acquisitions is true in that sense, but it's also the same for programmers. Sometimes we can't find you guys. You might premiere in a festival, and then we're like, okay, that's a great film, but how do I find this person? And we just can't, because it's not just the films you submit to festivals through Film Freeways and other platform. We also have to do our own research. We have to go out there and look for films that are going to be as engaging for our audience, and sometimes we just can't find you. So it's very, very important that we can find you. So I agree with you.
There's a question, yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering, what should we look for in a distributor or a sales agent?
Yeah, the question was just about what you should look for in a distributor or a sales agent.
It depends on your project. So maybe I would start off by just looking at their catalog, seeing what they've worked on. If it's possible to figure out if it's a sales agent, what's their reach? How many licensors are they working with? An experienced sales agent who's doing this day to day will be able to quickly tell you, this is my last sale with Netflix, this is my last sale with HBO. They'll be very upfront about the deals that they've done, maybe less about the numbers in terms of the actual license, but definitely they'll be able to tell you where the work has screened. And beyond that, at least for us, we always encourage filmmakers to talk directly to filmmakers. That's always helpful too, to try and see if someone may have worked with the company that you're interested in approaching and how their experience has been. That could be part of the research too. From the top of my head.
I'm going to let Tim.
So I'll go to the distributor side. So the distributor side of it would be, if you go with someone bigger, you're going to be part of the wheel that they're pushing projects out. If you have a small little boutique-y kind of film, you would like to work with somebody that can basically hold your hand. So there's a combination of things that you would be looking for. But again, it's the same thing. It's what have they done in the past? What have they been working on? I know game theory basically works 75% of them are Canadian projects. They handle very little international, very few pickups after that. And most of the films they do are small, and they need a lot of attention, and they put the effort with just literally 2 people to work as hard as they can on each film, pushing every button they can. If you've got a bigger film, an elevation or a VBS or something to that case, the benefits of working with them is they do have the giant wheel that they put the film into the wheel, it gets into all the departments, and they work the film with all of their people and ability that they can. So you get a broader thing, but you might not necessarily feel the attention that you might want, if that makes sense. You want, if you go with a bigger distributor, you're basically giving them your film and letting them take care of it. If you're working with a smaller distributor or a smaller sales agent, probably, you're getting more of a hands-on feel.
You can also look at like the marketing materials that are created by a distributor. Like, do you like the trailers and posters that they do? Do you like their taste in films? It goes back to the catalog, but I think that's a good measure of their...
You can actually sometimes blame the producer for making a bad trailer and poster.
You can. You
Because
definitely can.
occasionally they have influence on what they want to see in their...
Totally. But I think if you look in like a big picture way, it's a good way to sense like what a distributor is doing. There were some other questions. I'm just going to go in the back because I feel like, yeah, right there.
As a sales agent, what kind of criteria are you looking for when you're deciding to work with somebody? What do you want to see in their package? What kind of helps you choose who to work with?
Okay, so the question's, as a sales agent, what are you looking for in a package when you're picking a project?
So for us specifically and for short film, it's very easy. It really is. All we need from you is a password-protected, non-downloadable screening link that you would submit by email, along with a quick synopsis and information on a festival journey of the film. So whether you have a premiere coming up or not, where the film has screened. If you think that there are other things that you should mention that would be helpful for a sales agent to know, maybe some talent involved or the background of the filmmakers, please do. But to just start the conversation, it's as easy as that. And also, I'll just share the email address where you can send the screener. It's a distribution@ouatmedia.com. So we have my colleague Sang-woo, who reviews all submissions, whether they were solicited or not. And we'll start off there. Again, going back to film school days, I wish someone told me that a really beautiful, fancy poster is not necessary, you know. Just a screener to start things off.
We have probably time for one more question, so go for it.
Can you tell us a little bit about the industry trends? Like what sort of themes are becoming, that you foresee will be popular and duration of films? Like you mentioned about 15-minute shorts. Like, can you tell us about some of the trends?
Okay, the question is just about industry trends. Inga had mentioned that you're looking for short films under 15 minutes. That's pretty broad. Is there anything else that the licensors are asking for that you can point to? What's the inside scoop?
Well, the reasoning behind length, just to give you a quick kind of overview. So we have licensors who would only look on content that's over 30 minutes. That exists as well. But generally, broadcasters appreciate shorter content because they don't want the films to interfere with commercial breaks. That's something they have to think about still. And then streamers, you would think as a streamer, you shouldn't care about the length as much. But then the longer the film is, then the more skillful you have to be as a filmmaker to make sure that you can sustain the interest of the audience. Because maybe at that point, it's not so much about the length of the film, but how it flows and whether people won't click away. That's the reasoning behind it. And also, I would say maybe a third of licensors that we work with at this point still pay by the minute. So they take that into consideration as well. So opposed to one licensing fee, it's per minute fee. In terms of trends, I can't think of anything too specific other than maybe what pandemic has done on our end, that we've noticed an increased interest in non-scripted content. So put simply, in documentaries. So in the past, we used to mostly work with live action short films and occasionally animation and very rarely documentary. And since pandemic, maybe because people just crave that human connection, we've seen really a big push towards non-scripted and working with non-scripted. So that's one trend on our end, I could tell. Oh, and bigger streamers kind of developing more of an active interest in short film, being more active in Oscar campaigning. So short film kind of becoming now more of
That's exciting.
a genre people get very excited about, which is.
Tim, are there any trends on the feature side, just as our closing thought?
I think you said it earlier. It evolves almost daily. What people are wanting to see and what people are interested in. Post-pandemic, the romantic comedy was out, but recently, thanks to Miss Sweeney, the romantic comedy is back in. So you're going to see this glut of Hollywood producing stuff. Seems like Marvel's out, but another week or two, Marvel might be back in. So, but I would say really, horror thriller genre seems to be like really steady right now. And not necessarily dark, gross art R18A, you can't really see it in public kind of films, but ones that just kind of grip you and hold you there, I think they are pretty well stable, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it's tough for like just down the middle dramas. That's what I could say, is that it's tough for an indie drama these days.
I agree, Tim. You're right. We're in a really good space, Raven Banner, because genre has picked up. It's probably the most, as we've always said, it's the one. It's one community or a space where people can thrive and actually makes money. You actually make a little bit of money back. You may not make millions of dollars. We can't compete with the MCUs. But you certainly can, in an independent space, you can actually make some money back. Festivals that don't normally take genre films and don't take them serious are taking them serious now. I've spoken to quite a few festivals. I'll just let you know that Rotterdam, I think you all know Rotterdam Film Festival, they're actually talking to us on a serious level. So I'm having serious conversation about next year and what we have and so forth. So it's interesting that Rotterdam would be looking in that space for genre, thriller, horror, and stuff like that. I also want to agree with Tim that even though the genre is there, where it's not the hardcore stuff where people are getting slashed or anything that's vicious and violence, but it's more the trauma-based horror that is doing well right now. But I caution you, I feel like that is it's been saturated. It's overplayed. I think people have to think outside the box. That came from the pandemic, where a lot of people were dealing with a lot of trauma around that. So a lot of people are writing and expressing their thoughts in this area. But I think that's going to be moving along quickly. I think people don't want to do that as much. I think one of the things that is going to be the next thing is horror comedy. So just like you love the rom-com, I'm so glad horror comedy is coming back, because people want to laugh. We want to have a good time at the cinema again. So think about that as well. And final note, if you're thinking about trends and where to learn more about these trends, you have to go to the festivals, you have to go to the markets. People are always talking at the festivals, they're always bringing those ideas, and that's where you're going to find out where they are. And so just to close off, I run a program called Film Market Access, where we take people to markets like Cannes and Fantasia, We have 5 producers going to Cannes this year. And they're going to learn a lot about that, how to get ready for the market and how to find a sales agent. And we're also going to be working with Fantasia for Frontiers as well.
One last thing. So one thing, as you're making your film and you're sitting on your set and you're doing all that stuff, photographer, videographer, everyographer you can actually find, shoot stuff. Get behind the scenes stuff, get materials, because the more materials you can deliver to a distributor is better, because it's, if you just walk in the door, here's my finished film, and you go, you got anything?
That is such, yeah,
It's
we always
huge.
like never got enough stills. Have a stills photographer. It'll go such a long way.
Yeah,
Good
even
tip.
just buy the coffee guy a iPhone and just say, just don't stop, you know. And
It's also great for social media.
yeah.
It's really, really important for that.
Yeah. And the other one thing is, if you're writing a great film, and I'm going to say the word film because it's a film festival, there's opportunity also for series. So you might have an opportunity to make a great film, but also think about it. Maybe it might turn into a series. Or if you make a short, maybe that short's going to turn into a long, so to say. You know, so there's like back to that whole point of where's it going to end up playing. Your short film might play here, but eventually your long film is going to play here. So that's my last point.
Thanks so much, guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. What a perfect way to roll into our next panel, where we'll meet film programmers that will tell you about how to get your film into their festivals. Thank you so much to all of you for coming out today and sharing everything, and we'll see you in 10 minutes, everyone.